Hello, hello. Welcome to Sunday School, virtual Sunday School session number 6, I believe we're on now. We are going to be talking about community of believers today. And we're going to start with a reading from Scripture, and this is from Acts 2:42. And this talks about the early Christians and how they worshiped. The believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the community, to their shared meals, and to their prayers. A sense of awe came over everyone. God performed many wonders and signs through the apostles. All the believers were united and shared everything. They would sell pieces of property and possessions and distribute the proceeds to everyone who needed them. Every day they met together in the temple and ate in their homes. They shared food with gladness and simplicity. They praised God and demonstrated God's goodness to everyone. The Lord added daily to the community those who were being saved. So, early Christians were worshipped in some similar ways to how we worship now, but there are some differences as well. Think about why we get together at the Seaside UCC. Give that some thought. What do we as a community, what does that bring you? Why do we gather? And what are some of the ways that we gather? And what are some of the things that we do when we gather? Well, we come together to share and celebrate our faith and to learn and to break bread together and to physically gather, which I think something interesting for me, I think that the physical gathering of the actually physically coming together, to me, is a very important part of church, and which is why it's been a little weird lately that we can't do that. But there's other important things too that we do. So now back in the day, the very first Christians, back in the time of the Roman Empire, the authorities in the Roman Empire, they were persecuting the early Christians. So basically they would punish them. They didn't want them practicing Christianity, and they would punish them if they found them doing so. Because of the danger of persecution that Christians faced at this time, their worship was often had to be held in secret, so in caves or catacombs, which are underground tombs. The secret meeting places were often marked with the sign of the fish, the symbol for the early church. Sometimes when people greeted each other, if they were unsure if the other person was also a Christian, they would just casually draw half of the sign of the fish in the ground in front of them, maybe with a walking stick or maybe with their foot as they talked. And if the other person wasn't a Christian, then they probably didn't even notice what that person was doing. But if the other person was a Christian, then they would see that half fish, and they would respond by drawing the other half of the fish, and then they would know that they were Christian as well. When early Christians met to worship together, they would often read from Scripture. They would tell stories of what Jesus said and did, ones that they knew from the apostles, stories of his teachings or miracles, and they would talk about what all this meant. They would pray and share a ritual meal of bread and wine together, the way Jesus asked them to, in remembrance of him. So you can see we have a lot in common with these early Christians in how we practice our faith. So we would, same thing, reading Scripture, telling stories about Jesus's teachings, learning about Jesus's teachings, and talking about what does it all mean. Coming together and sharing our thoughts on this, and sharing our time, and meditating on what it all means. And of course, prayer, very important part of our worship together, and the sharing of a ritual meal of bread and wine. So there was quite a bit in common, but it's very different now today for us at the Seaside UCC. We don't have to worship together in secret. In fact, we have two buildings where we worship together, and sometimes we worship outside. We certainly don't have to go into caves or catacombs, so we're very lucky in that we can do so without persecution, like these early Christians did. Now, the Christianity in general and the Seaside UCC specifically they're both communities of people that come together. And think about that word, and one being larger, Christianity being very large community, and our Seaside UCC being a much smaller community, but both very important. Think about what that word community means, right? We use it all the time. I know you hear it all the time, but have you ever really thought about what it means? Is it the town we live in? And that's often referred to a community, or the MDI community. You hear the MDI community time. We hear about our church community, right? So what I'm going to do, I want you guys to think this through. So if you're watching this with your sibling, I want you to talk with your sibling about what you think community means. And if you're just watching on your own, then if your parents are there, then you can talk about it with them, or if they aren't there, then grab them and bring them into the room. And I'm trying to get my computer going here. Well, I can just leave it like that. So what I want you to do is, so tell each other, each take a turn and tell the other person what you think community is. So you can pause the video, and when you're done, you can start playing the video again. All right, so hopefully you did actually pause the video and talk to each other about your definition of community. Stop. No, actually, I'm not going to stop sharing yet. I'm going to show you this other slide. Let me try to see if I can make it big. I can do it. I've done. Where's the play button to make it big? Show. Oh, here we are. There we are. Oops, except my head is covering the quote. So I came across a definition of community that I was really enamored of. So enamored of means I just fell in love with it. I really like it. I think it really captures what a community is, and I think it applies both to our UCC, our Seaside community, the Christian community, and also any community. So actually, before I read the quote, we can see it there, but I've talked about these different sorts of things. So there's the town as a community, right? So we have the community of our town. It might be Southwest Harbor as a community. And the MDI community, we have our worldwide community, right? Now let's think about the community of MDI. You have your school community. So that you swimmers, there's sort of a swimming community, right? Because I'm a runner, and everyone always talking about the running community is so wonderful, which it is. But that's another community. So all these and it's sort of like a group of people, but it's a little bit different than a group. A community is a group, but a group isn't necessarily a community, because you might have, a group of people sitting around a table that are there for a meeting. Are they a community? Not really. And you think about it, and you think about so let's say let's talk about the community of MDI. Lots of people in it. And so what is a community? Is it a group? Is it a type of group of people that all think the same thing? No, certainly not. We know on MDI, people think lots of different things. Okay, well, so that's a location, the location of MDI. Is a community a location? Is it a certain place, or a town of Southwest Harbor, town of Bar Harbor? That's a place, right? But a community doesn't have to be a place. It can be, like I said, the community of swimmers. It's Maine swimmers. It brings kids together from across the state of Maine when you go to swim meets. So it's really not necessarily a place. If you think of the community of Christianity, that's not a place. Is it a bunch of friends? Not necessarily. Think once again, the community of MDI. I bet there's some people on the island that you might not like. There's certainly a lot of people you don't know, so it's not a group. Is it all people? Okay, we think about Christianity. So is a community something of people who believe? Do all people in a community believe the same thing? Certainly not. 'Cause once again, if you look at the community of MDI, not everyone believes a thing. And even inside Christianity, or even inside our Seaside community, even though we're all coming together because of our faith, individuals within that community might have different opinions about their faith. They might have different ways they celebrate their faith and different ways they worship God, even though that's what brings us together. And that diversity is what's so wonderful. So then how can you actually, if it's not place, if it's not beliefs, age, how do you define it? So I'm going to read you this quote. Suzanne Goldsmith is an author. That turns out, I love the quote so much, I looked her up, and it turns out she grew up in the town next door to me, which is sort of cool. And I just think it's a really wonderful definition. So I'm going to read it to you, and then there's going to be an activity involved with this quote. So I will read it. Communities are not built of friends or of groups with similar styles and tastes, or even of people who like and understand each other. They are built of people who feel they are part of something that is bigger than themselves, a shared goal or enterprise, like righting a wrong or building a road, or raising children, or living honorably, or worshiping God. To build community requires not only the ability to see value in others, but to look at them and see a potential partner in one's enterprise. So in one's experience, in one's daily living. I just think it's really, that defines it really well. So I'll repeat the last part of it. A community is built of people who feel they were part of something that is bigger than themselves and a shared goal. So certainly, I think that is true of our Seaside community, right, and of Christianity in general, because that something bigger themselves is our faith, is God, is our worship. And to build community, to go back to the end of the quote, to build community requires only the ability to see values in others. So to build that community, to make that community stronger, it's all about valuing those others in the community, even if they are different, even if they have different beliefs, they live in a different place, and valuing them and seeing them as a partner. So I just think that's a wonderful quote. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and bring up, oh, I shouldn't have done that yet. Actually, I'm going to start sharing again. So your activity for this week is all about that quote. So here it is. So this is a worksheet that I will post on Facebook with this video, and I will also on the YouTube, in the description of the video on the YouTube, I will paste in the URL where you can find this worksheet and download it and print it up. You don't have to print it up. You could just use you could just use separate paper if you want. So the idea, this is called chunking, and I want you to take this quote, and this is for the older folks. I've got a separate activity for the younger folks, for those who can't read and write yet. But most of you that are looking at this, I think, can. So this is for most of you. So we're going to take a closer look at this quote, and you'll see on the left, the quote is divided up into a bunch of phrases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different parts of the quote. And your task is to rewrite the ideas of each of these sections of the quote in your own words. So look at this first part and say, well, what does that mean to you? And rewrite what that means to you for each of the different parts of the quote. Once again, I'll post this worksheet on Facebook and put it in the description, the URL in the description of the YouTube video where you can download it. Now, if you don't have the ability to write or read yet, I have another activity for you. For those folks, for the young ones, I want you to think about what communities, and actually everyone can do this one because it's really fun, but the older folks should do the other one too. I want you to think about what communities you belong to, because there's so many, like your family is a community of sorts, right? And so start with a little picture of yourself, or you're in the middle, and then draw a circle for one of the communities that you're a part of around yourself, and just a circle to represent that community. And then I want you to think about another community you belong to and draw another circle. And if there's overlap, there might be overlap between those communities, like your school community and the swimming community. There's some overlap there, right? But they aren't all exactly the same. Or there might be one community, like the Seaside community, Seaside UCC community, might be entirely contained by another community, such as the Christian community. So in the end, let's see if I can show you what this looks like here. It's going to look something, it might look like something like this. You can see some overlap. You can see, if I go back too much, I'm not sure. There you go. It's not showing up that well, but you can see some overlap, some are entirely this one. That big one for me that I drew, that's the worldwide community, because we're all part of that. So another way to think about what communities you belong to. So that is it for this week. I will see you next week. And in the meantime, be kind and be safe.